The Black River Falls School Board order. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mary Jo Rozwanowski.
Here.
Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Tom Epps. Here. Troy Webb.
Here.
Nick Hellstead.
Here.
Ann Deemer.
Here.
Brad Dobbs. Absent. Marty, has the public notice been verified?
Yes.
Moving forward to community engagement, gifts and grants.
Yes, so you saw included in your packet, the Ashley Furniture Company has done for many years an awful lot of support to a lot of community schools. They are very supportive of engineering, of STEM or STEAM, the robotics. They have really been a strong partner to many, many districts. This is probably the fourth year that we've been gifted a grant for our work. And just to remind those that may not be familiar, Christy Roush at Red Creek and Brian Stemper at the middle school both operate robotics clubs. Those robotics clubs have become increasingly more competitive, that we've actually hosted a large event where there were, I think there was over 60 teams that were competing, and if you've never had the opportunity to watch them, it is pretty amazing stuff as they try to make their robot do something, perform the task that they are challenged with, and they can't make it happen, and the kids immediately go back as a team, and you can see the wheels turning, and they quick make some changes and some adjustments, and they go back and give it another shot. And so while I'm very appreciative to Ashley Furniture for making that donation grant to help support that work, I'm also very appreciative of those staff members that give of that time and find time within the school day so that all kids that want to participate get the opportunity, as opposed to just those that can get a ride after school time. So that is the only grant for this month.
I make a motion to approve the grant as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Do we 7-3? Do we want to do that?
Yep, so you would need a motion for somebody.
Entertain a motion to move 7.3, the school nursing annual report, to just after the public comment before 5.3.
I still move.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor of moving 7.3 to after public comment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So we now have public comment. I believe we have one.
Barb Settlebauer. Hi, Barb Settlebauer, and I'm a taxpayer. And I wanted to speak on the 8.4, 720 school safety plan. I was just looking at the agenda, and I got a paper here that was the end of the book is where it came from. But I'm going to give you guys a little history lesson that I know that the school kids don't get. Okay, the policy said something about for fire, tornadoes, bombs, explosions, things like that, and now it's terrorists with guns. So anyways, to qualify as a mass killing, according to the federal government, 4 or more must be singled in a single incident. From 1764 to 1966, 11 people were killed, a schoolmaster and 10 students, in a span of 202 years. Since 1996 to 2018, a span of only 52 years, more than 200 children, college students, teachers, and professors have been murdered. 20 mass school killings in that span. What happened? A single parent found prayer awful and sued and won the suit. The Supreme Court banned the reading of prayers that were written by the school board. In 1963, prayer of any sort was banned. Here's the prayer that they read. Almighty God, this is kids. Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon you and we beg your blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. Amen. And I want to just ask the teachers if any student prays for them, like they did way back when. Or parents, do they pray for you teachers? Or for your school board? Do they pray? This should be clear to anyone, but it is not. Most people under 60 years of age think God of Abraham is a myth and should be put out of the school and public arena, citing the separation clause that is not in the Constitution. It was the writers of this so-called clause who put the Bible in the schoolhouses and colleges. God is booted out of school and the public square in 1963. JFK assassinated. 2 months later, 1965 brings the sexual revolution and new sexually transmitted diseases. 1967 brings the Vietnam conflict with 50,000 soldiers killed. 1968, Bobby Kennedy is assassinated, the first Kennedy to support a pro-abortion candidate. 1973 brings legal abortion of children. 1974 brings affirmative action. 1980 brings the gay plague, later then renamed HIV/AIDS. Now more than 25,000 dead. 1986, homosexuality becomes legal in most states. The churches began accepting the lifestyle. In 2001, the 9/11 tragedy. 2004, Indonesian tsunami kills 240,000. And 2010, Haiti earthquake, 3,000 dead. 2015 brings men marrying men. 2018 brings push to legalize pedophilia. This article doesn't even include the mass killings of 2020, 2021, and 2022. The problem is that we try to control and eliminate God when He is in charge. The first couple of commandments explains how truly important He is and always has been. Now, woke, W-O-K, stands for willingly overseeing known evil. Awake, a warning against known evil. Which one are you? Are you woke, willingly overseeing known evil, or are you awake, a warning against known evil? Hopefully this country does repent, but it seems unlikely. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Move on to 7.3. Elizabeth?
Jill, do you have a clicker or are you gonna slide for us? Okay. Would you mind holding the microphone? It seems to be struggling. There you go. Right. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Johnson. I'm the school district nurse. And our health services team for the school district of Black River Falls is me. And then our school district medical advisor is Dr. Rogers. And then principal and nurse delegate staff are school secretaries, designated teachers, and aides. Today I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to talk about qualitative versus quantitative. Our children are more than just numbers. While the volume is reflective of my workload, I think that some explanation of what I do is important. Nursing by nature is a bit of what I call shadows work. We connect with our patients and do our work quietly in most patient care settings. It's not, if you look on your hospital bill, nursing care is not a line itemized charge for you. So it's kind of in the background a little bit. School nursing is no different and is largely misunderstood. I do a little bit more than just hand out Band-Aids. So tonight I'm going to weave in some of the quantitative data numbers with some qualitative information about the scope of my practice and what a school nurse really does. The school nursing statement put out by the National Association of School Nurses says, school nursing, a specialized practice of public health nursing, protects and promotes student health, facilitates normal development, and advances academic success. School nurses grounded in ethical and evidence-based practice are the leaders that bridge healthcare and education, provide care coordination, advocate for quality, student-centered care, and collaborate to design systems that allow individuals and communities to develop to their full potentials. So one of the things I do is a collaboration within the school district. I collaborate with a lot of people district-wide. With administration, I talk to them about staff trainings, emergency response teams, student and safety concerns, with teachers and teams for specific health trainings for specific students. With food service and kitchens for allergy and diabetic concerns. This is often a daily collaboration for determining cart counts for the diabetics. With maintenance to determine potential hazards in buildings and playgrounds. If there's a problem on if I'm seeing a number of injuries on one particular piece of playground equipment, then we might look into that and see whether there's an issue with that or whether it is user error. With bus garage for injuries, safety concerns, and trainings. With counselors when mental health or suspected abuse issues arise. With social workers when poverty, access to medical care, mental health issues, suspected abuse, challenging family conditions or situations become apparent. With FACE team and 5th grade and 4th grade teachers for puberty talks. With high school biology and health sciences teachers for blood typing, healthcare discussions. The athletic trainer on quite a lot of things actually, WIA physicals, concussions, athletic trainer, coordination, CPR for coaches, safety plans, with school psychologists for IEP evals, reviewing medical records, etc., explaining medical conditions that might be contributing to educational concerns, and with 504 coordinator on health conditions and accommodations. Health visits. We see lots of kids every day in the offices, and there are hundreds of nurse visits for serious rashes and injuries, things that I'm called over to each building. Injuries that are severe enough to recommend referral to the medical establishment are as follows, and this is significantly higher than last year, but last year there were a lot more parameters placed on kids, and also we weren't in school for 6 weeks or so in there too. So, and this is where we look at some of those causes for some of those injuries and make sure there aren't any concerns. So special health conditions. This data is limited to what is available in Skyward, which is somewhat limited by what a family share with us. We aren't privy to all health conditions that all of our students have. But there are roughly 166 students with 226 health conditions. That may include diabetic cares, severe allergies, G-tube cares, anaphylaxis, seizures, catheterization. There are also a number of students that have like severe heart conditions, blood pressure conditions, brain malformations, lung conditions, and syndromes affecting multiple systems. Many of these conditions require nurse training and delegation of cares to unlicensed assistant personnel. And a lot of time is spent over training and overseeing some of these nursing duties.
If I can just insert there, as you're talking about that, that is one of the challenges in some of our support staff retention of staff, that they are very eager to come and support students academically, and they are sometimes very taken aback by how many medical cares they have to provide, even though during our interviewing, we've really tried to paint a more clear picture of exactly what that role is going to look like. We try to be really clear about that. I think, I say this to Elizabeth all the time, I think the average community member would be incredibly surprised at the significant and severe medical conditions that are managed by school staff and by a medical staff of one, plus all of these people that she tries to train internally. So I just wanted to highlight that Elizabeth certainly does all that she can to help train. But even secretaries, that has been a factor in some secretaries choosing to leave because the stress and mental load of diabetic care and just all of those very specific skills is not something that everyone is comfortable with. When you went to join a school district, you don't think about that significant medical need. So just wanted to add that piece to it.
That's true, and that's one thing that I noticed when I started this job was I had teachers that said I became a teacher, I didn't become a nurse, what do you mean I have to do all of these things? And that's a tough part for me to not want to do those cares all the time too, but that's the limitations of my position here too, so.
Absolutely.
And then
I think she was done with that for Dana.
So today I wanted to highlight one health condition that I work with a lot and is increasingly. So diabetes. During this school year, we had 11 type 1 or insulin-dependent diabetics. This is well above the national average of 2.15 cases per 1,000 children ages 0 to 19. So with that type of average, we should be looking at a school district this size should have 3 or 4 type 1 diabetics, and we have 11. So that is significant. Oh, and I want to point out that obesity is not a factor in type 1 diabetes, nor is there any increase in any prevalence in any particular ethnic group. There are theories, but it's a largely unknown etiology of why some children develop type 1 diabetes. Black River Falls is an underserved area in terms of medical services, and this becomes very clear with pediatric diabetes. There are no pediatric endocrinologists that come to Black River Falls. All of these families, they must travel to Gunderson, Marshfield, or Mayo for their care, and this is significant for these families because they have appointments at least every 3 months, sometimes more if they're more unstable. And there are no local pediatric diabetic educators. So that's where a lot of that ends up falling on me in the school because there's nobody to refer them to locally.
Do you have any thoughts on why we have so many?
That would just be pure guesses. I kind of did a poll in the Cooley region, and most of the other schools align more with the national average. We are a little bit higher here. Melman said she was a little bit higher there too.
And interestingly, aren't they clustered at certain grade levels as well?
Right now they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right
Which
now
isn't always
we
the
are.
case, but right now the middle school has.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, since we don't really know what causes it, we don't really know what is our area more at risk or not. It's really hard to say, or if it's just totally anecdotal that we have that many right now.
Nothing to do with obesity with type 1.
Nope, nothing. Because type 1 diabetes is not your grandfather's diabetes, and it doesn't develop slowly over time. Children with type 1 are healthy children 1 week. Usually they present with an illness of some sort, they end up being hospitalized, and they're immediately insulin dependent. So it's not the slow course that a type 2 diabetic takes. So this, for me, means that I may have a day's notice that I have a newly diagnosed diabetic who needs blood sugar checks 4+ times a day, carb counting, insulin calculation and administration, and monitoring for highs and lows. And the student and family are in a state of shock at this point. They're having more information thrown at them than they can process, and it's a way more education that can happen when that student initially leaves that hospital. Because it's a complete lifestyle change. It throws everything about eating and not eating and, off. So it also takes some time for the correct insulin ratios to be figured out, because for every person that's different. And for the student to learn and identify how highs and lows feel. So I'm largely a part of that sometimes of pointing out to kids that, when you start feeling this way, this is because let's check your sugars where, you're high and that sort of thing. And even several years into diagnosis, children are growing, and when they go through puberty, when they're active, these are all things that require very frequent adjustments to dosages. So during all of this, I am in close coordination often with the care providers as well, and giving them information of numbers, and it becomes a group effort to try to figure out the best course of action for this student. And type 1 diabetes in children has been steadily on the rise in the past 20 years. And there is now emerging data that there could be an increase in incidence in type 1 diabetes in children following a COVID-19 infection. So that's kind of new research that's emerging, and time will just tell what happens with that. But the amount of time that I've spent doing diabetic cares, it really increased dramatically this year. It's quite significant. So staff trainings, when I am able to delegate some of those cares, some of those diabetic cares I can't delegate right away, or I can't delegate when a student is in a more crisis situation. But that is included in some of the staff trainings that I end up delegating. And many of these nursing cares need to be delegated across the 5 buildings, so they require training. There's also some training needed for emergency situations. So some of the main things I do are first aid training for all aides in all buildings, CPR training for coaches and emergency response teams, medication training, student-specific trainings for G-tubes and diabetics, that would be like multiple aides and secretaries, student-specific trainings for seizures and EpiPens, multiple teachers, teams, and aides. Bus drivers, train them in emergency response, or if they have a student on their in their bus that is has a seizure or that sort of thing, then we go through what that emergency response is. And then new hires throughout the year, because that was definitely something that seemed significantly more taxing this year, was the number of times I was called to do yet another training for yet another new employee, and that was difficult. CPR and first aid, I prioritize certifying coaches to meet the WIA requirements, then working on training other staff, prioritizing for building needs. This actual school year, I did not hold any CPR trainings, largely due to time constraints, but I also had completed a lot of trainings for most of the coaches in the spring of 2021. But looking towards next school year, I do need to do quite a few trainings in August, or get things lined up and scheduled so that we can get people on those emergency response teams trained and make sure that, because again, sometimes coaching staff changes over rapidly too, so those coaches have to be certified as well. Medication is a large part of school nursing. We administer medications daily for many things, including but not limited to ADHD, seizures, diabetes, chronic illness, and acute illness. We also manage emergency and over-the-counter medications. Continually working to exercise best practice with medication forms, reconciliation of controlled meds, medication training, and storage of all medications. And we're continually working to establish continuity of care by enhancing lines of communication with parents and medical providers. For some students, they require extensive collaboration as medication orders change, and sometimes providers rely on staff members' assessments of students to know whether medications are working properly or not. I've also worked as a student advocate by picking up prescriptions and trying to coordinate medical supervision for summer months for some higher needs students. Immunizations. We sponsored our annual flu clinic with Jackson County Public Health. This year we were able to resume offering flu vaccinations to the community as well as for our staff and families. Last year we had the COVID restraints and were only able to offer it to our own staff, and this year we were able to open it up again, so we were all very excited about that. 96 children and 119 adults received the flu vaccine for a total of 215. We also hosted Jackson County Public Health as they provided COVID-19 vaccine clinics in August for 12-year-olds through adults, and pediatric COVID-19 vaccination clinics when the vaccine became available to ages 5 through 11. As far as our normal childhood vaccinations, the state required childhood ones, many children are still behind on their vaccinations due to not getting their normal well child checks. A lot of it's due to COVID. And then we did not meet the state mandated 99% vaccination rate, so that has more complications in the long run too. So we that's one thing that I'm going to really prioritize this fall.
I'm not sure if the board is all aware, but school districts are required to meet 90% vaccination rate for their students, knowing 100% that that's a family action to go and get vaccinated. We are still judged by the state and held to that expectation of 99%. And so Elizabeth does calls and letters and an awful lot of encouragement. In the end, if a family chooses not to for religious reasons, that's fine, but they have to fill out a form, and then that helps us reach that 99%. So basically, they can't do nothing. They have to do something, either go get the vaccination or declare on the form that you're exempting your child from those vaccinations. And so it becomes a very big deal because it creates more and more layers of work when families are not in compliance.
Right, and they are, you can choose not to, and you can fill out the waiver. That waiver does come with repercussions if we were to have an outbreak of that disease too. But yeah, they have to at least send that form in. So I plan to work some days in July once they do the rollover to run reports and send out letters to the non-compliant students. Sometimes families simply don't know that their student needs another round of vaccines, or the 6th grade, there's a Tdap vaccine and sometimes people don't realize they're kind of out of the well child yearly checkups, and they just don't realize that they need one. So I'll send out letters, hopes that they can schedule appointments before school starts. I send out mass messages to all incoming kindergarten families that the children need another round of immunizations at age 5. Also mass messages to all incoming 6th grade families, and I sent some paperwork home with them on that at the end of 5th grade year in anticipation for that 6th grade, needing that for 6th grade. And so that's when I'm really gonna move that up high on the priority list for early fall. Another thing is I need to talk to Jackson County Public Health a little bit more about either doing some sort of a childhood vaccine clinic, or seeing how we can coordinate that, maybe in conjunction with our open house or something along that line. So that's kind of in the process. I will reach out to them yet this week probably. Vision. We started screenings this fall with the assistance of the Lions Club, and then I was later able to, that got interrupted, but I was later able to borrow the spot camera to finish the screenings. We were able to screen 4K kindergarten, 1st, 3rd, and 5th graders. Several years ago, we added 4K in kindergarten, which has been a great thing to get vision problems identified at those really early literacy ages. Has been wonderful. In total, we screened 538 students and sent home 83 referral letters. That is a 15.4% referral rate. So the result from that is kids that can see well will likely have increased academic performance. And hearing. Historically, I have screened all the 1st, 3rd, and 5th graders using the AeroScan. The nature of the AeroScan is it's a very up close and personal screening process, so it requires me to physically touch each child. Last 2 years have been difficult with that, with the COVID protocols of, I would need to wash my hands between each student, or wear a new set of gloves between each student, and so that was kind of put on hold, and most school districts were doing the same thing. I did do hearing screenings by request and referral from teachers or speech language pathologists that were concerned that there might be an issue, or for some of the kids as part of the IEP process. But I'm very hopeful that we can return to normal screenings next year. A new thing that we started last year was, in talking to the athletic director, we realized that a big barrier for starting sports for some of our middle school and high school kids is this WIA sports physicals. It is required, you're required to have these before you even start practice. So with identifying that was a barrier to athletic participation, it might be an economic barrier, but it's also very difficult to get non-emergent appointments in a timely manner. So we worked to host a sports physicals. I think this was something that was done years ago, but since I had started working here, it had not been something that we had been doing. So Dr. Rogers and Dr. McGillivray from Crohn Clinic donated their time in conjunction with Crohn Clinic and staff members to provide some low-cost sports physicals at the field house in August, and that was quite a success. We sent out messages and scheduled the appointments and assisted families with the paperwork, and we had 28 students that received sports physicals that way, and that enabled them to participate in sports this year. I'm hoping to provide that service this coming year again. I have reached out to all of the medical clinics in town to see what level of participation they might like to have in that venture. So COVID-19, okay, I know nobody wants to talk about COVID, and I really don't want to talk about it either, but I kind of have to, because it did take up a lot of time. I had a lot of optimism going into this school year that it would be different, but that disappeared by the second day of school when we were dealing with our first case. We masked and then we didn't mask, we quarantined and then we didn't quarantine. One thing I helped with was I worked with establishing and a little bit of oversight on the on-site COVID testing. I handled a number of phone calls and emails from both sides of what unfortunately became a political issue. I spoke with families that were hit hard from COVID and had family members, including students, that were dealing with and are still dealing with long-term health issues that are attributed to COVID. And I also handled phone calls from families angry about masking and quarantining and that sort of thing. So I recognize that school boards and superintendents have taken the brunt of the heat, but school nurses have also been under fire with this whole thing too. So our reality. Positive cases in students significantly higher than last year. We had 369 positive cases in students and 90 positive cases in staff for a total of 459. I was involved with every single one of these cases, determining whether the individual had been at school and whether contact tracing needed to be done. So that took up a lot of the time. The building secretaries actually did a lot of the actual contact tracing, reaching out to teachers and that sort of thing, but it was pretty time consuming. Another aspect of what I do is employee health, the flu shots, blood pressure monitoring. Sometimes somebody needs to be monitored on a regular basis, they'll reach out to me and ask if I can take their blood pressure on a regular basis. Wound care for employees is a COVID-19 resource, a health resource. Evaluating after workplace injury, sometimes I'm called in for that. I have sometimes transported people to the clinic when they need to go to urgent care following a workplace injury. Educate staff on health maintenance. And in the past 2 years, I've become a lot more visible to many of our staff, and I believe that a lot of staff members are a little more comfortable coming to me with health concerns. So it's kind of a nice part of my job too. Student education. I was involved with the Human Growth and Development Committee and the board policy discussions regarding changes to these curriculums, and I'm pretty excited about what we are, what next year will bring. A little bit nervous, but we're planning to add 5th grade puberty education, which would be me talking to the 5th grade classes. At least on the girls' side of it, and continue to, and we'll continue with that provider talk that we've done the past number of years, but it would be nice for these students to have a little more information before going into that provider talk. And planning to add a 4th grade hygiene curriculum for all, and then a puberty light talk for girls, because we do have a number of girls that need a little more information a little younger. I began giving the puberty talk to 6th graders in FACE. It's a one-day thing, and it's kind of fun, actually. And then another thing is I'm working to increase diabetic education with high school and middle school students, particularly targeting those that need a little extra support. And then I've always got some ideas to make my job more, I guess. But some proposed education programs might be in the future. Some districts do, the nurse will do a kindergarten hand washing. In first grade, do like a dental care or coordinated dental care type of presentation for them. 7th grade, I'd love to see us do some sort of first aid basics. That was kind of an idea my own girls had when they were in middle school. They're like, oh, we have friends that are diabetics or, have EpiPens, and we don't know how to help them. And I think that 7th grade time is a good time. It's when kids start doing more things with just friends, not necessarily always having adult supervision. So some kind of brainstorming things. The senior girls, boys safety wellness workshop is something that I know Zulidom and I punted around several years ago, and we brought in, Vicki Mikulski, the school social worker, to kind of talk about something with that, and then COVID hit, and that's kind of got pushed to the side, but it is something that's kind of on our minds of enrich the students' preparedness for graduating from us and not being under the school umbrella. So day-to-day school nursing, my days are very unpredictable. At any given time, I might get called to all 4 main school buildings, sometimes multiple times a day. I have learned where to do U-turns, and my office is over at Gebhardt. I can't tell you how many times I've done a U-turn at the CCU. I sometimes leave a building and get called right back there. I can be in the middle of vision screenings that happened this year and get called to 3 different buildings within the hour, leaving the Lions Club member to fend for themselves. And the things I get called to buildings can be anything from a seizure to stomach pain to injuries, concussion assessment, cuts, scrapes, possible broken bones, breathing issues, allergic reactions, rashes, eye injury or infection, ticks, infected wounds, stitches assessment, back pain, high and low blood sugars, ingestion of substances, possible overdoses, anxiety attacks, slivers, embedded earrings, dressing changes, and so much more. Every year I've had something that I'm like, ooh, that's a first. And in the course of assessments like that, sometimes I can help the process of identifying some underlying issues too. Collaboration with community resources, flu shot clinic, COVID-19 vaccine clinic, and all things COVID with Jackson County Public Health. COVID-19 testing with accelerated labs, WIA physicals in 5th grade puberty with Crohn Clinic, Child Development Day screenings with Western Dairyland and the Lions Club, Bridging Brighter Smiles, used to be called Smiles for Life, and vision screenings with the Lions Club. So my job is kind of always evolving, I've learned. So next year will be my 8th year with the district. And in this job, one has to be reactive and responsive to address the health needs of the students, staff, and families of our district. That includes reviewing and proposing policies. On the horizon, kind of, ticking in my head, some are tick removal policy, reevaluate a lice policy or procedures regarding that. Possible policies in the futures for service animals if we should ever need that, or for Narcan. The health needs of students in the community continue to increase, and as things come up, we need to develop policies to handle those things. I've realized too through the past 7 years that sometimes a school nurse is the only health provider that a student may see. So I work to be responsive and advocate for families. I do a lot of providing wraparound care or continuity of care. And then I had written this actually before I got some new information, but because I was losing our athletic trainer mid-year was difficult. It kind of increased the amount of work I had to do with some of the sports injuries and concussion management. It made some of that a little clunkier than it had been, but I'm excited that that will hopefully go streamlined again. So. And it is difficult to be in 5 different buildings across town. Luckily, we have the 2 that are in the 2 campuses I think of often. But I do my best to follow best practice guidelines and do my best to be 5 places at once sometimes. So, any questions?
I have a question. When you get a vision and hearing screening referral out, how much follow-up is usually done with that on the parents and on their own, or is there usually the social worker help?
So I send out, and that's something I would like to continue to be a little more responsive with. I send out letters. A few years ago, I started really following up with some of those and asking teachers, have you seen any response back if I haven't gotten these forms back, saying that they've followed up. The last 2 years has been a little harder with, I just haven't had the time to follow up after some of those. But that was something that I would like to. We do, if we know that a student has been identified by us as like they failed their vision screening, then if we know that there is some sort of barrier to that child seeking an exam or getting glasses, then the Lions Club has been very helpful. And I will make a referral to, with the family's permission, make a referral to the Lions Club, and then they kind of go through, they talk to the family and they go through and figure out what best fits the needs. But we have a lot of community clinics, I guess, that are very helpful with some of that provide vouchers or really, they care about getting kids in glasses too. It makes a huge difference. And so there definitely is support for the families that need that. The stopgap sometimes is identifying that, and that's what I would like to continue to work more to make sure that we are identifying those and assisting. But yes, I do get the social worker involved sometimes too.
Elizabeth, going back to your student injuries, are those injuries just during the school day, or is that also with athletic practices or contests?
So those are, they are mostly during the day, but there's been some question of how those incident reports should be handled after hours. And sometimes they're turned in and sometimes they're not. So, but that is a good point, and we should probably be tracking our, after school, like our on school premises, but after school injuries.
If I could just update everyone, the athletic trainer was a real challenge this past year. That was a service that the hospital very generously gifted to the district for many years, and we paid just for the concussion testing for our athletes, and they donated all of Dawn's time, and Dawn is amazing. Like, she accelerated that program light years forward, and the communication to the parents was just a really huge asset. The hospital, certainly their own budgetary reasons, could not continue that gift, and athletic training services are really challenging to come by, especially in rural areas. We can't afford a full-time person, we don't have a need for a full-time person, but qualified people that are able to be here is a real challenge. So Andy Oscar, the activities director, and Mr. Madsen, and I sat down and we just did a whole bunch of brainstorming about what we could possibly do. Jill was involved a couple times, just what could we possibly do. So Dawn now works at Jackson County Public Health. She helped us to do some prioritizing, which sports are most injury prone, that it would be vital to have a certified licensed athletic trainer at, and which sports could we work with the EMTs in town to have an EMT on call during some of those events, which is a much lesser financial amount. The other thing that we really lost that Elizabeth started to pick up, and as well as Andy Oscar started to pick up, was when there was an injury at a sporting event. So Tuesday night basketball game, girl twists her ankle, comes to school on Wednesday. In the past, she would have been able to see Dawn Jacobson, athletic trainer, to kind of evaluate the day after whether you think you need to go to the doctor, whether it looks like it's making progress or whatever. So we had some of our parents of our athletes very concerned, and they actually said, we're glad that our child got hurt at an away game where they had an athletic trainer, as opposed to getting hurt at a home event where there wasn't an athletic trainer available. So that was disappointing. Dawn has worked with her current employer. She now works for Jackson County Public Health. She is going to do, we used to call it the lump and bump clinic, where athletes could just stop in 2 days a week and just get another professional's opinion without the family having to make a call to their doctor and do the full appointment. Of course, that's always a choice if families prefer, but if they just want somebody with some expertise to take a look and see what they think and to monitor treatment, she's going to be able to provide that 2 days a week next year, which will be fantastic for families. And so we'll have our events covered, and we'll have that, I call it lump and bump. Andy Oscar keeps calling it scratch and dent clinic, but the event will be the same. And so Dawn does, the reason this connects to that conversation, Dawn does amazing record keeping. And so those events where she is seeing them from a sports injury will clearly be classified as that event, and she'll be seeing them during that lump and bump time, which will not take your time during that school day. So long answer to your scenario, but I thought you would also like to be updated on where we're at with athletic trainer services. So.
Yeah, and that concussion part is an important piece. Several years ago, it's probably been 6 years ago or so, Dawn and I had developed a concussion care plan, and that is something that we also distribute to the community providers because we would like them to fill those out. And what that does is it has the provider check off what the symptoms are that that specific student is experiencing in relation to their concussion, because it's all people present differently. And then for that specific student, what classroom accommodations would be helpful, need to be implemented in order for the student for their brain to heal successfully and for them to have academic success. And so we've used that, and Dawn often would fill that out, and it just was very streamlined. Then I would distribute it out to the teachers, and so that was that coordination was a lot more difficult to manage without her in place, because I would have to seek out that form from the providers, and sometimes that takes multiple attempts as well. So great, yeah, that'll be good.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? If I could just real briefly, Elizabeth said that you have to be adaptable to be in her role. Good Lord, these last couple of years, she's been incredibly adaptable, and I just would like to recognize Elizabeth publicly because she has just been so willing to partner with everyone in any way possible, right? She is just a great advocate for students, and I appreciate that during all the COVID stuff, we would not always come to the table in agreement at first, and there would be lots of discussion, and rightfully so, advocating for what is best, recommendations, and we just really have appreciated Elizabeth's leadership a lot, a great deal. And when you said that you've been more visible in the buildings, I couldn't agree more. I think that you are on the tip of everyone's tongue, which sometimes means you run around more crazily, but it also is evidence of what an incredible asset you are to the district. So I'm very appreciative of your efforts.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. And that's my contact information if anybody has any additional questions.
And that's why she's never in her office, because she puts it up. No, I'm kidding. Also included in your packet, I just shared with you that Bridging Brighter Smiles. Again, the district has no skin in the game when it comes to that. It is a service that our families sign up directly with them, and we just allow them the space to do it. And so in the spirit of all kids getting quality health care, you can see the numbers of students who are getting their dental needs met through that program. And so we are glad that they are willing to continue partnering with us. So, all right. Mr. Epps, would you be willing to move 6.1 next so that Ms. Hall could present?
I would be glad.
If somebody would be willing to make that motion.
I move to move 6.1 forward.
Second?
Okay.
I don't have nearly as much.
And that's okay. So our focus on purpose during the school year has been different groups of staff that are in the midst of either curriculum reviews or we've heard from building principals. And I thought for our July focus on purpose, when a lot of people think that the schools are shut down, I wanted to show you to the contrary, that there's an awful lot of great things happening during the summer. And this is Ariel Hall's first year as a summer school coordinator, and she will be the first to say, boy, is next year going to be better and different and easier, right? It's an awful lot to take on your first year, but she was willing to come and share with you some of the things that are happening this summer. So take it away.
They're on top of construction. There is a ton of student activities. And like Dr. Severson said, this was my first year. I've always been a summer school teacher. So to actually see the entire June, July, August, there's a lot happening. So I kind of tried to put them in order of how things happen. So if we can, high school happened first. So here's some of our data. Go ahead.
You want me to just go ahead?
Yep.
Okay.
Next one. We had 81 students registered, 61 showed up, 60 were successful. A total of 90 classes were successfully passed. And doing the math, majority of the students just needed that 1/2 credit. So it wasn't a lot of double dipping. So that was really awesome to see. They came, they did their work, they left. Huge shout out to our tech team, because boy was there some scrambling when computers were handed in Friday and summer school started Monday, and maybe they weren't and maybe they were, and there was lots of phone calls, lots of texting. It happened, we got credits. The staff were extremely phenomenal, making sure kids were happy, they were healthy, they were safe, breakfast was on time, lunch was ready. So many wheels were spinning. but we did it.
So what was happening at Red Creek?
This was at the high school.
That was at the high school?
We were able to use those rooms down by the LMC
By the LMC.
as long as we stayed out of the other areas, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and the students were very respectful of that. Like, they're just as eager to have a new school as the rest of us, so it worked. They did not want their pictures taken, or you wouldn't see pictures of them. Middle school took place at Red Creek. They were enrichment-based, focused off of their iReady goals for the students that were registered. So the goals were to increase reading fluency, reinforce their comprehension skills, increase vocabulary, because if you remember at last month's meeting, that was our lowest bar in iReady across the board, so we really wanted to push vocab. Using the metric system, because USA doesn't like the rest of the world, so converting fractions and mixed numbers, vice versa, and using coordinates. So the phenomenal duo decided they were going to read Hatchet because it ties all of these skills together. And so by the end, they worked through their 2 weeks with all of the programming that they set. Their last day, they went out on the foundation trail and they actually had GPS coordinates and they geocached. And when they found their cache, it was a clue that matched up with Hatchet or was a comprehension riddle, or they had to use math to figure out Brian has this many materials that are this many inches, how long can his fishing pole be? Or it was so incredibly fun. And the next slide is pictures of us, because I was trying to play too. And it was super exciting. We also ran through all of our K-8 summer school heavy math and reading interventions one-on-one with our licensed interventionists. So in the top right, you'll see Mrs. Rausch is working really, really, really heavy with these kids on what are the sounds you're missing, what are the spellings that you're not understanding, what phonics pieces going into your math, what is your number sense, what level are you, how can we help you? She reached out to families after summer school and said, these are programs that are gonna help your kid close that gap. And then they did a whole fish unit too to go into Hatchet and bring the fishing pole. It was really exciting. We had middle schoolers who are way too cool for us, sad that it was done at 12. They had wished it went until 2.
How many kids did you have?
We had 39 registered and our daily average was 27 a day.
Excellent. And just for everyone's information, middle school, summer school sometimes happens, sometimes does not happen. It's this regular routine that kids get into in participation, and so that's fantastic. Sorry, I see it up on top now. I didn't look that far. As
Oh, there was also an interesting piece this year. A lot of my, once were little 5th graders are now 8th graders, they were more special needs, needed special accommodations, weren't, and parents were more than willing with the staff that, who's teaching it? I would say who the teachers were, and yep, they can be there, it'll be great, it'll be on. So it was completely adaptive to everyone for this. So that was really awesome to see. Lots of differentness. All right, then our littles came in and whoosh. They were at Red Creek K through 5. Again, heavy focus with the phonics and number sense based off of, again, we pulled in our interventionist, so Mrs. Presswood, Mrs. Rausch came in and said, this is what we saw, these are the kids that are coming, this is what would benefit them. So they did inventors and inventions was their theme, and holy cow did we make a mess. The 2nd graders actually got a whole bunch of computers donated from the district and disassembled them and got to understand what's in technology, and then tried to rebuild their own robot, and they played with coding a little bit. They got to use the sphero balls, and it was, again, another group of kids that we've had 2 that almost every day cried because it was lunchtime and they weren't ready to be done. So that was really exciting. And if you, there's pictures of
philosophy was leave them asking for more. Was that your philosophy?
Yes. So we had, our K1 group was actually the biggest. And we think this was because these guys were the most affected by COVID. They missed kindergarten. So social skills were huge. I was extremely fortunate to have 1 teacher, 1 aide per room, which was huge, and we used them and then some because some of these students had skills that we really needed to help them in a positive light. So we had a mess, as you can see. There's lots of shaving cream happened, they made butter, they made milk, they made ice cream, yogurt, they made their own like squishy water balloon kind of things. They invented more than any little people. Second grade, same thing. We used our iReady data to see what can we do, how can we build. We noticed our incoming second graders had phenomenal phonics. So that was a nice light bulb to know that the curriculum we had chosen 3 years ago is now starting to show in where our incoming second and third graders are. So that was exciting to see. And this is where our little future engineers came into play. And the next slide is lots of messy pictures of those guys. And they just had a blast.
Are the kids that attended, they were identified by teachers and recommended to come, or could anyone come?
Anyone could come. I did have teachers send out letters saying this would be very beneficial, or
We didn't say no to anyone, but we certainly encouraged some kids with larger gaps.
yeah, yeah. And fifth grade, they really focused more on decoding vocabulary. So getting to those Greek and Latin roots and the bases, more than the phonics and that kind of stuff. So they were a little more frustrated throughout the day. But by the end of it, they were talking to us using prefixes only, and we had to try to come up with a suffix for them. So that was kind of silly to see them nerding out a little bit in summer. It was fun. And they did a ton of experiments. I have examples of some of the work that they did. The long division, it's hard to see the top right, but holy cow, there was a lot of steps in that one equation to try to figure out which fish was the biggest. And then I took a snippet of a beautifully written paragraph from one of our 10-year-olds, and it's more than 3 sentences. It has a beginning, middle, and end. He's got commas, he's got punctuation, and it was just really cool to see the growth just from having some fun in writing. So I wanted to show that too. And then we have swimming. After the learning, now there's so much more in summer. Lifeguard training happens the first week out of school, recertifications in January. This year, Ms. D had 2 weeks of classes. The American Red Cross requires 28.75 hours for lifeguarding. When they complete it, they take the test, they get certified. She had 10 students in June, 4 from Black River Falls, 3 from Alma Center, and 3 from Melrose Mindoro. Week 2 was 3 students and 1 adult. And the pictures are our now Lunda certified lifeguards. If you go down to Lunda, those are last year's graduates. And then Xander up top with his CPR babies. In addition to swim, Mr. Marquardt offers all of this over the summer. I was blown away. I don't have the dates or the students or pictures yet, but I'll get all that when he's completed all of these. So this is also happening right now and throughout August. And then the band does a ton of stuff. So middle school band will start their lessons August 15th. Parents and students will be notified of whenever their practice times are. And then Mrs. Hardy runs all of the band camp for all of the parades that they do. All of that happens in August as well. And again, she'll send me pictures in August when they're done, but I was super big on, I just want lots of pictures. Another interesting thing, the district is collaborating with the Native American Indigenous Games this year, and Black River Falls is hosting the tryouts. So even with all the construction happening in our buildings, Mr. O and Dr. Severson have made it possible, like the space is available, the pools are available, we now have certified lifeguards that can help you with this. And so that will take place on July 23rd. It's students from all over the state. They try out. When they make it, we go to Nova Scotia next summer to compete as Team Wisconsin. So Black River gets to be one of the host tryout sites. And so there's a lot going on in the summer. Does anyone have any questions?
It's good.
It all just looks awesome.
There's a lot.
Thank you so much for putting that together, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sure your enthusiasm is contagious with the kids.
I had a lot of fun taking stuff apart.
Okay, moving on to 5.3, the family student handbooks.
Yeah, so though they were all included in your packet, just so everyone is really clear on the process, the principals take the time to go through those handbooks with collaboration with their staff during the course of the school year. They have brought them to you with red line corrections so that you can see what the old language was, what the recommended language was. There's not usually a lot of real meaty changes to them, more some updates along the way. Because the board approves them at this meeting, they are considered loosely board policy, and that is an important piece when we perhaps find ourselves in disciplinary situations, that you are very clear what the expectations are and how it was communicated to families ahead of time. And so I don't know if you have any questions about them. The principals aren't at the July meeting, but I had asked ahead of time, and so I can answer some, or I can certainly get some answers for you.
I had a couple things. On the middle school one, like the mission statement was on the top of one page and the rest of it's on the next.
They are not formatted right now.
Okay,
So they make some edits and changes, and then they give them to their secretaries to make them nice before they
Same
print
thing with
them.
the high school, because there was a lot of strange formatting.
I wonder if that was partially because of the corrections.
Could be like, Kim Penza's name was on a page by itself.
Yeah, the track changes get super messy.
Yeah, they were real messy that way, but
I had, and maybe it's in there, under the WASD policy resource guide, it had recommended that we list the chain of command in case of a complaint in the handbook. Is there, and I'm not sure if you would recommend that, or if you have it in another spot where the parents receive that, parents and students receive that.
I thought complaints was listed, but let me.
If the complaints are there, but I didn't see like a chain of command about what.
This person, then this person, then this person, is that what you're suggesting?
Right, like if you have an issue at the high school, address it with the person first. And that was, the policy resource guide kind of has gotten some action that people come straight to the board member rather than handling it within that. Or is that information given out in a different way?
So, yes and no, right? I feel like it probably should be more clear in here. Mine is having a hard time loading, I'm sorry. I keep getting an error message. Can you
I
open?
looked in the high school one where if.
So we have board policy, but we don't send board policies home with all students, obviously. Board policy would have our complaint procedure. I'm curious what it says in here about complaints. Just search. Yeah. Slow. Yeah, mine is being very slow. 10.
Yeah, 10 is what it was.
Page 10.
Yeah, there, it should be brought to the building principal, okay, that's good.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
exactly what we
I
would
guess it
want.
just wasn't
Yep.
listed dotted, step by
Okay.
step, but no, it is,
It is.
it covers
Yep,
it.
that's exactly what we would ask.
Perfect.
And so that's a great point, because there was a recent past where a parent came and directed their complaint to the board first before the teacher or principal or I ever had a chance to address it. And so an appropriate response would always be, have you tried to address this with anyone in the schools yet, right? That's usually my question when somebody shares a concern with me. Have you had a chance to work through that with the principal yet? Have you talked to the teacher yet? Not that I'm not willing to help, but the person that's most connected to the issue in the first place is best equipped to at least try to do that initial problem solving.
Thank you
So,
for pointing that
Yep.
out. Thank you.
Yep. Any other concerns? Mr. Epps brought up an interesting point that at the high school level, when you read the dress code, hats are not banned, but at the middle school level they are. And that was a change this year at the high school, and I think that there's just lots of conversation about at what point do we not try to put barriers in the way, right? Like don't pick little power struggles. At the elementary, hats are still not okay, but you're with that one teacher for the bulk of the day, and so it's not as big of a deal. At the middle school level, they feel like kids still need a little bit more boundaries and so forth. The no hats or the not enforcing hats at the high school was met with a lot of concern by some staff members, but they just really feel like we need to start treating the kids when you're 18 years old. They wore masks for how long and were hiding parts of their faces, and so they just felt that a respectful relationship matters a lot more than whether there's a hat on the head or not. And so the areas of the handbook that talk about have been changed over the last couple of years. I will add that each of the buildings is currently working on a behavior education plan that is going to flesh out an awful lot more. When this happens, here is where we're headed. When this happens, here's where the parent is mandatory engaging in that conversation. The challenge was that the handbooks are supposed to be to you in June, but with so many new principals, they needed a little extra time to take a look at them. But they want to engage staff in those conversations about those behavior education plans, and they are still working through those. So I think some buildings are a little further along than others, but by September, I would think that you would see those behavior education plans. We found some models from another district that we really appreciated, that it had the same common threads throughout the district, but yet the processes were developmentally appropriate for the building that they are in. So we are hopeful that we can do something similar, that you will see the same common threads in regards to student behavior expectations will be consistent across all of the buildings, and the supports and stuff will be modified based off of the age of the students. So those will still be coming. They're not ready for these handbooks yet.
Okay, so yeah, that was my next question, that I see everything from the behavior response.
Yep.
And Forest Street is all fenced out. So.
Yep, but they're pretty close with their behavior education plan, so.
Okay.
I had one question.
Yeah.
Like for the high school, their cell phone policy, they're changing it some. I know I had heard some concern last year of like the principals not enforcing the cell phone policy and just leaving it up to the teachers, which doesn't really work, I don't think, in school or workplace, to not have the authority figure, you know, back the teachers or whatever. So I mean, obviously there's a time and place for it, but I mean, when it's in class or whatever, their time to work, they should not be on it, you know.
Agree wholeheartedly. I would say that what the principal said was interpreted very differently by different staff. There are some staff who advocate very strongly for being able to use the phones as a piece of the instructional tool, and he said that's your choice when you're in the classroom. That's your choice. If you want students to be using them, then you can do that. There were, I'm just going to read it in accordance with school board policy, cell phones and other electronic devices be turned off and kept away. So the students who refuse to surrender their cell phone will be sent home. So the part that they're asking, classroom teachers will be given one warning to put their cell phone away. If the cell phone remains out, the student will be sent to the office. So that is the part that they are going to, that's what they are recommending doing. It becomes a real challenge. I think one of the greatest challenges of cell phones is that some teachers enforce the rules and some teachers don't. I understand what you're saying, that gets even more complicated if they don't think the principal is enforcing it. When it was early in the school year, he said, we're really going to kick kids out of class and stop their access to instruction by sending them to the office. Why can't you as the teacher just take the phone from them? Why does the kid have to be sent to the office? So he tried to have teachers implement that, and not all teachers were comfortable with that. And in the end, Ms. Penza just said, fine, then send the kid out. Just send them and we will try to get them back into class as quickly as possible.
Well, obviously it could be used as a productive tool or unproductive tool.
Absolutely.
So I mean, probably more so unproductive, I'm thinking.
But this is new language here.
The recommended, yep. They were supposed to be sent to the office anyway. Now they've just created the different steps along the way. So what happens when they're sent out?
Tablets that they could use for the same purpose.
They'll have a laptop for sure.
A laptop, which I mean, any of the research they want to do, they could use a laptop too.
Sure, but recordings and sound and all of that stuff, images. I mean, there are some that they use the cameras. There's some that, so there's more than just the research. But they definitely all have laptops as well. They are a nuisance. I bet if you ask the majority of teachers from 4th grade on up, their preference would be schools that phones not be allowed even inside the school doors. I bet that would be their preference. They would, Katie's looking at me back there, that would be the preference because it's just this power struggle that is so painful and parents are not willing to support that as well. So,
And there are some kids who don't have phones, right?
very few at the high school level, but that is true.
Right, and it doesn't change after they got out of school either. So,
Exactly, right? It's bad.
so I think that, like,
He didn't say he wouldn't do it, he said this is a classroom issue that you should be able to manage. And there were teachers that felt that they could not manage it, and so then the office has accepted that back and said,
So
fine,
this
then
is
remove them.
the solution.
Yeah, I guess. This is the compromise, I'm gonna say, the compromise. Because there are some times when you tell a kid, you need to have your phone off, they will like, oh, sorry, and they'll put it away. The opposite is, yeah, I did, and they're still sitting like this the whole time. I say, put your phone away, yeah, I am, I don't have it out, and that whole, now you've lost instructional minutes for everybody. So,
Right.
the goal is to keep kids in the classroom where the instruction is happening for as much of the time as possible.
So,
Any other handbook questions?
I make a motion to accept the family handbooks as presented. Is that what you're looking for?
yes, knowing that we'll probably have
The behavior
additions.
issues, yep.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of accepting these family student handbooks, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Move on to a community engagement initiative update. I know that we have kind of two groups working out there, or at
I
least
think they've
a portion,
united.
portion of the school board is part of that, right?
Well, I just met with 3 other ladies today, Bobby Weiss, Michaela Conlon-View, and Carla Gearing. We met and talked, just did some initial conversations about what a committee might look like. And so far, what we've come up with is our 3 areas that they would like to promote would be, first of all, promoting positivity in the schools. Second, celebrating successes, and then third, problem solving. So we met, we brainstormed maybe some other people that might be interested in joining our group, trying to get people from all different areas. And there's a lot of energy there, a lot of positive energy with those people. And our next meeting is July 26th. And then we will know more details after that. It's just initial forming.
So is that through the PTO? Or-
Bobby Weiss is the PTO president, so she's part of it, yes.
Okay,
Is it through the PTO? Not totally,
no,
but she is part of
okay,
it.
separate group. And then the other group, is there board members involved in that one?
So
Is that,
I think this group is the one that the board members are going to engage
Yes.
with.
Oh,
Yep, I think they're
okay.
all wrapping into one as opposed to multiple interests working on the same thing.
Okay, very good.
And so just if I could add, while we're talking about the promoting positivity, celebrating successes, a reminder that this year we have 3 student marketing interns. And while retirees need 75 days of separation, so I can't talk in great detail, we have a former very positive individual who is interested in coming back to work very limited hours per week in helping to supervise those 3 marketing interns, and is all about promoting positivity and just telling the story within the community, like what does a day look like in our schools and what are some of those things that are happening. And so I'm excited to have her leadership on top of those 3 student interns, and would love to connect them with that
Yes.
group once you're established.
That would be great.
Very good. Any other comments about the initiative? Okay, moving on to the employment recommendations.
So things are moving along. Unfortunately, the hard to fill positions are still extremely hard to fill. We don't have any movement yet on our school psychologist, and today we lost a speech and language pathologist. And so those two are going to be a real challenge. We noticed that there were several openings at the middle school. After talking to Mr. Nortman today, he has all of his content area positions filled, so he's very excited. But that still leaves him with no applicants for art teacher and very no acceptable candidates for school counselor either. So there's still some key positions that we are looking for, but we're making some headway in the teaching positions. So that's
I know we have a lot of openings. It seems like I see every week some aide leaving. Are those positions being filled? Or
So typically we wait until mid-July to end of July, and Marty does one post for aides, and all of the principals and Angie Tamke interview at the same time, and then they do a little bartering to see who aligns with which building best.
Perfect.
Instead of posting for each individual building, we create one pool of candidates for the aide positions, and so that will be coming shortly.
Okay, entertain a motion to accept these recommendations.
Second. I'll make a motion, and I'll make the motion, sorry.
Make the motion.
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Our strategic plan review.
So it is time to start putting that all that wordsmithing to good use and update the posters with the updated goals for the strategic plan. So as I shared, this process has been a little bit slower and bumpier than we had anticipated. COVID was a big part of that, but we still feel very confident that the goals, thank you, are representative of the work that we are currently engaged in and the direction that we are headed. We did have community engagement participation as well as staff be a part of it. What I'm hoping is with your final approval, we could order the new posters. Each of the office areas would have one that looks like this, and then the other one that was in your packet would be the 11 by 17s that would be in each of the classrooms. That gets into a little bit more detail as to what the leadership initiatives were under, there we go. That talks a little bit more about this is our goal and these are the steps that we're going to take to get there.
I like that, those words stand out in orange on this one.
Good. The print shop did a great job. I gave them all of the text and they did lots of formatting for us, and I thought they turned out really great, and I just hadn't brought it to you and would like to get them ordered so that we were ready for fall. I don't know if you recall, but when we first did our strategic planning, we had all the posters printed and then realized that there was a typo in the word engagement, right? It was the tour of the high school with our new facilities, and I think Jill and Mary Jo were almost afraid to see me and tell me about it. They're like, engagement is spelled wrong. And yes, it was. So we checked and double checked and triple checked, and
Okay,
and
so
we
that
appreciate
was
it.
my next question, to make sure everything
Whew,
is.
it was in your packets, now it's on you. No. We also appreciated that they put some of our foundational graphics that we use within the district, like the grade 8, we embedded that right in there, and then that idea of continuous improvement. That's not a local model, that is from DPI and the RTI Center, Response Intervention, their center, but it certainly is one that we've used a great deal, and so that continuous improvement model is one that is widely used around education, and so we thought that it was nice to get some of those graphics that staff recognize when they see these. This is all part of the big work that we're working on. Our hope this fall is to really remind everybody after all of our COVID work that these are really the 4 big buckets: our people, community engagement, finance and facilities, and student success, and we're hoping that they just continue to see that all of the work is really interconnected, and the more we strengthen one of the pillars, the more positive impact it has on all the rest of the pillars. And so with your approval, we'll get those ordered and ready for dissemination this fall.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we accept these and they go into production.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passes. Move forward to student success report.
So knowing again that August or July is an unusual time to bring in staff members, we thought that we say in our people pillar that our staff are the district's greatest resource. And so how do we positively impact student success through our adults and the work that we do with them? And so I asked Nicole to go through our August professional development calendar with you, and look at how soon it starts. Monday, August 8th are the first days that we're expecting large groups of people to be here. So anytime you hear the misnomer that teachers have summers off, please remind them of all of the incredible work that happens during those summer months.
I don't have to be reminded.
You do not, correct. There are others that need to be reminded.
And you'll notice on the 8th and 9th, that's a standards-based grading leadership boot camp. I was thinking to myself, well, this will be the first time in a long time that I haven't talked about standards-based grading, but
There it is.
that's not true. Standards-based grading is heavily featured in what we're going to be doing in professional development this August, because it is a lot of work with implementation. We want to make sure that we get it right, and the devil's in the details, and we got to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that we've got all of this figured out. So we are going to be having that standards-based grading leadership boot camp, focusing in on trying to leverage our leaders, our teacher leaders, so that we can implement thoroughly throughout our system. We also have professional development for our special education teachers. They have a great deal of extra things that they need to do to get prepared. So Ms. Tamke's been working on getting that established. We will also be welcoming our new paraprofessionals. And then we have these mandatory flex days, which I feel kind of like, oh, it's flex, but not really. But also our secondary teachers will again be engaged with more standards-based graded learning, because we have more to do at our secondary level. Meanwhile, our elementary teachers that day will be working on Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. So we'll be really focusing in on what we are doing in reading and math to differentiate both for students who are at grade level below and above. And I just noticed that as we have an Orton-Gillingham refresher, where our district has invested heavily in Orton-Gillingham, so it's important that we maintain that and that we continue that work moving forward. And so then the last one on, there we go, on that next page, we're just going to continue working through to make sure that everyone's trained up in our technology, EduTimer, and Canvas. And then we get to all staff kickoff, and which we hopefully will be held at the Lunda Center. We'll see with construction how that all works out. And then another thing that we know that we have been working on with our grade A strategies is that we've really been talking about engaging students with the content. And we know that in order to engage students with the content, that we need to have strong, supportive school communities. And so this next feature here at the end is where we're trying to really work on that. So we've invited and been talking with Barb Blackter-McKenzie, and she'll be talking about trauma-informed schools with our staff. And that will include information around trauma-informed schools and strategies, as well as a panel that we're going to put together and small group discussion. We'll close out that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just if we could highlight that for a moment. If there's anybody from the board that would like to join us on that day, you are very, very, very welcome to do it. So at our Student Success Committee meetings, we've been talking about all the things that we talk about around the communities that we build within the classroom. So you mentioned the trauma-informed, we've done the responsive classroom, we've done PBIS, we do all of these different things to talk about how we should be together. And so we listened to a group that just talked about ways of being, right? Like, it's not a definitive program. It is not, these are the right words, these are the wrong words, but these are ways of being together. And only when you feel respected and valued and a part of that learning community as both the adult and the kids are you really able to accomplish all that is before you. And so we heard a presentation from a representative from the Oneida tribe, and as I was listening to this individual, I was like, we have Barb right in town who is just a phenomenal resource. The SEEDS work that she's done and the trauma-informed care work that she's done. And so we reached out to her, and she was very happy to kind of bring together all of these, or the social emotional learning, all of those pieces that come under that ways of being and how we're building our supportive communities. And so she's coming, and the morning is going to be her talking about historical and generational trauma, and not just historical and generational trauma to know about it, and how it impacts a child's brain, and how you can help bridge that to help heal the brain so the child is ready to learn. And then in the afternoon was going to have a whole panel of individuals that we get to interact with. She raised an excellent point to us that doing this kind of training in the fall and then not talking about it again throughout the rest of the year is only going to keep repeating the same process, cycle that we find ourselves in, right? We kick off really well and then we get busy with all the other things in front of us, and if we don't cycle back to it, it gets lost and people are wondering what the next new thing is going to be, as opposed to making sure we're getting really good at this thing. And so she is creating a core group of leaders throughout the district who are going to facilitate monthly conversations that are reflections on how we are implementing our supportive communities, and that you build this little cohort group that you're going to reflect with every single month on the progress that you're making around our supportive communities. And so the leadership team from Student Success really felt strongly that until we change the hearts and the minds of the educators to really understand that trauma and not lower expectations because of it, but strengthen relationships so that you can increase the expectations knowing that students are going to be able to reach that. So we're really, really excited about that date. I'm sorry to steal your thunder. I just wanted to make sure that they all felt very invited to come join us. And then not only just here's what it is and all of that, but then we invited David O'Connor to come and say, and here's what it looks like in your classroom. These are instructional strategies that are more engaging to students whose brains have been damaged by trauma. And so we're excited about that pairing of those two events this fall. So, sorry.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, so it's something that we're really excited about offering to our staff. I think that our diversity is our strength, so it's something that's going to be really exciting this year. And then the final thing that you'll see, or the final item you will see on here, is the district-wide open house, which is held on August 30th. So we have all sorts of time to get all of our construction projects done and rounded up and cleaned up and
polished.
Yes.
Of course, you're welcome to go to any of those trainings that you would like to. I just feel like this is one that's going to be coming back an awful lot this year, and would encourage you if you have the opportunity to join us.
You're on for next one.
Yes,
too,
I
as
am.
well, the
All right.
standards adoption.
So this is similar to the standard, the student academic standards have to be adopted each year by the school board. And so they all are laid out here in this document, and they have links to the actual standards themselves. Some key things that I would like to just highlight is that there have been some shifts in ELA and in math. So in ELA, you'll notice, not that you'll notice, but I just want to explain that there's a shift in foundational skills. So we've been talking a lot about our phonics words, our phonological awareness and fluency. So the state is reflecting some of the same things that we're seeing. So they're prioritizing those foundational standards at the same time that we've been really reshifting our work. So that aligns nicely with what we're doing, and it's nice to see. The second area where there's been some shifts is in mathematics. There have been some key mathematical shifts in the standards. Just to talk through it, I wrote it all down to make sure that I say it correctly. So the goal is for students to have a deep understanding of mathematical concepts, a high degree of procedural skill and fluency, and the ability to apply the math that they know in order to solve problems outside of the classroom. So in math at different times, education does this, it swings back and forth, and so sometimes it might have really highlighted in curriculum and really focused in on, we gotta have kids that are fluent, they know their facts really well, and they know the algorithm, and then then it'll swing way over, like, no, they need to be inquiry-based, and we gotta work with this, but right now what they're saying with the math shifts is that we need all of these skills. We need kids that are fluent, or like that have fluency and math fluency, and we also need kids that can apply those mathematical concepts and think mathematically in the real world. And so we are been receiving training on these shifts, all of our teachers have, and that's reflected in the standards work that we've been doing, and that standards-based grading work, it ties all of this together. And also, as we were looking at materials adoption going forward, we're really aware that we want both of those besides math available to us when we work with our students. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Action is formally.
Make a motion to approve the academic standards adoption as presented.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes. Moving on to the monthly expenditures, long list there to look through. Anybody have any concerns?
Only 74 pages.
Then I will make a motion that we accept the monthly expenditures as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Move forward to the facility update.
So you received both of the packets, both of the collections with the photos. Forest Street, it is great news that they are making some progress. They're closing that gap of the days that they were behind. It's still a little bit harried when you hear that we're still 9 days behind and it's mid-July, right? That's not a lot of wiggle room. They assured us again that they have their people on call for a second shift if that becomes necessary. But we also know that second shift costs more than first shift. And so we're hopeful that they can continue with some good weather and make up progress. As you saw, the most significant concern at this point in both sites is the acquisition of the materials. And so things as simple as the tiles that need to go on the floor, the paint is an easier fix, but I'm nervous about those until we see them. They keep saying they're set to be here the first week in August, and so we'll just hope that that is legit. So anyway, I don't have any specific things. Kent got to go through Forest Street and said that learning stair, he's like, you can see the picture of it, but when you're standing beneath it, he goes, it's so cool. So I'm excited to be able to see that come together. Pardon me?
I've seen that.
You've been in there, right? I have not been in there yet.
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry.
I don't know.
Okay, any other questions about the facility update? Moving forward to the budget transfers and revisions.
Yes. My laptop doesn't work.
Everything came in this afternoon, right?
Yes, I apologize for that. We're still working. We're working in both years, actually. We're still working in 21-22 and 22-23. So these revisions basically true up the accounts as we've spent them or as we've received aid or grants versus what had been approved in the beginning of the year. So these are required to be approved so that our account numbers of our accounts align with the budgets as we've spent them. I'm going to go to the detail page first instead of the summary. My mouse and my laptop's not working very well. I don't know what's going on. So this is all the detail of the changes in Fund 10. We're required to report revenues by source, so whether it's a local source, a state source, a federal source. And then the expenditures are by big function, big expenditure like instruction, supported instruction, or if we're transferring funds to another fund, or open enrollment is one of those things in that non-program transactions as well. Some of the big things in the top in the revenue are grants that we received funds for, like the Get Kids Ahead. The Gears grant was a carryover from the prior year. Medicaid, we received more than we had planned on, so we needed to increase that budget to reflect that as well. And we received additional ARPA funds from the state, from the governor, so that was also a new grant funds. I also added a budget for our IT insurance claim. Our costs associated with that were about $30,000. Insurance will cover a lot of that, but it does not cover like salaries and benefits of the people who worked from the district and put in extra hours and overtime. That's on us. That's not something insurance will cover. So then the offsets to those were expenditures. So Fund 10 increased by $462,000 and expenditures increased by $462,000. So it was a wash that way. One of the things that I was able to do is be creative and use, as I had mentioned last board meeting, a lot of the salaries and benefits that were not spent. So we had budgets that were underspent in salaries and benefits. For example, we didn't fill positions, we had unpaid leaves, people took single instead of family insurance like we had budgeted for, or no insurance at all. So as you know, an insurance plan at $20,000, that adds up pretty quickly that we can repurpose those funds, which we needed to do because we had other areas that were overspent some. Our legal was overspent than from what I had budgeted. Our election costs were more. We had not planned in a primary. That was something that was cost for us this year. Utilities, of course, both gas and electric. Our fuel for our buses and vehicles was overspent. We also had a delay in some of our project costs from last June 21 that spilled over into the beginning of this budget year, 21-22. So we need to account for those as well. Our open enrollment out, we didn't quite budget enough for that. We needed another $129,000 just to cover that. So thankfully, we had some wiggle room with some of those other, like I said, salary and benefit costs that were able to cover those expenditures. So that is the whole detail and reflection of that. In the other funds, we received more aid in special education than we had planned on. And then we also made some adds for our IDEA entitlements, flow through and preschool. We just trued up to what we actually received. And then in Fund 39, I wanted to capture the defeasance that we did that wasn't originally in the budget. And so I wanted to true up those budgets as well for the revenue and expense in Fund 39. And then in Fund 46, I'm optimistic, although we still have some expenditures to pay out for for 21-22 fiscal year. I'm hoping that we'll be able to transfer a little bit to Fund 46 to our capital maintenance fund, but that's yet, sometimes, I hate to say it, I'm always surprised by something that hasn't been paid and it's from November. There's no purchase order, there's no nothing, but you have to receive an invoice. And so we think we have everything captured. I think I'm not going to be surprised by too many new revenues, although Medicaid sometimes arrives in July and our auditors do have us write that back to June because they feel it's a prior year revenue. So if we do have those additional revenues, great, we're going to put them into Fund 46. So that's a plan for that. So the first page was the summary of all of that detail, just showing how our specific accounts had changed. It's just not working really well. And that would be the change in the budget on the right side of the page. Again, revenue and expense for Fund 10 was the same at $462,000, no change there. And then the special projects, the debt service and the capital improvements are down below showing those changes. Do you have any questions on any of that?
It's a lot of work, Joe.
A lot of numbers to crunch.
A lot of numbers to crunch. Unfortunately, it was a lot. But I think we're in pretty good shape. We're going to be, like I said, pretty close to not adding a lot to fund balance. And I hope we can add some and then put that into Fund 46. So we're going to be close. Revenues and expenses are going to be pretty equal.
Which is different than usual. We often buy a bus from our end of year funds, and so our end of year funds we're hoping to have some. And if we have some, it's significantly less than we've had in the past because we bought a bus and made deposits to fund balance or to our Fund 46 in the past. So.
That's a good point, Shelley, because we've always had salary and benefit fluctuations, yes. Right? That always happens. But the fuel, the gas and electric, those kinds of things.
The legal costs. I mean, we've been dropping that budget over the last couple of years, and this year that really.
So they were much tighter this year and actually overspent, and so we had to use some of those other places where we had usually deposited into fund balance or Fund 46. So.
We'd rather have a surprise in the summer, right? That you get to do some of those extra purchases or deposits as opposed to feeling like you're skating in on the skin of your teeth.
Just balancing, yes.
Do we really need to make another bus purchase, or we just can't because
we just can't this year?
We're still okay.
Yeah.
Well, we need to. We're starting to get where we need to.
They're probably not a good deal anyway, so.
Hard to kill it.
We do have some approaching over 10 years old, and we need to, of course, some of those we bought for in a very short amount of time, so we do need to figure out within the next year or two how we can replace some of those.
Entertain a motion to adopt the budget transfers and revisions.
I make a motion to approve the budget transfers.
Second it.
Second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the budget transfers and revisions? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Move on to the policy committee. This is the second reading of 4 policies.
I think I accepted all of the changes in alignment with the discussions we've had previously. I don't know if anyone has any concerns or additional questions.
Anyone have any questions on those?
Make a motion to approve the policies as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes to adopt the policies. And the Lunda Theater lighting electrical bids.
Would you like to talk?
We have,
We received 2 bids on the electrical components, one from B&B Electric and one from Bush Electric. Bush Electric was the more favorable bid. It's just a tad higher than we had hoped it would be, but yet from the original thought, it's a lot less. So Greg Bush estimates about $32,500, but he feels if we actually do time and materials, it would be less than that. He put in a lot for labor in there, and he said if we actually do it based on time and materials, it would probably be less than that $32,500. And the $32,500 is less than the B&B quote, sorry, of $35,741 as well.
and he's also local and has helped out the district immensely.
And he's given us great customer service.
Yes, he has been very helpful to the district.
Would you do like a, time material not to exceed?
He probably would, that would probably, yes, he probably would. I feel like the $32,500 is the not to exceed, but I can talk to him about that for sure. We'll use Fund 46 for that piece of it, and I do plan tomorrow to write a grant to Lunda Charitable Trust for at least half the project, right? So that is something that we're hoping we'd be able to assist with, and Shelley's had some conversations with. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said absolutely, that's a good route to go.
We haven't asked in a really long time, and so when I met with, Brad and I met with Carl and Larry, they were appreciative of the upkeep and the prioritization of keeping it functional for community use, and they encouraged us to fill out the application, so we'll hope.
So, do we have a motion to accept the bid from Bush Electric?
I'll make the motion. Accept the bid.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the Bush bid at $32,500. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Move on to the meeting minutes from June. I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I make that motion.
We have second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes from June. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. District Administrator's Report.
Great, so we put up 9.2. I included in your packet just a policy forum, just for your information, I guess, and just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about it. I feel like you hear each election cycle about more and more districts that are talking about referendums and the referendum cycles, and we have had an incredibly supportive community when it comes to supporting our facility projects. For years, we have been in a budget deficit mode where we continue to make cuts to our programming and our spending, reprioritizing our spending so that we don't have to talk about a revenue limit override. There are many districts who that has become the norm. There it is. And I just wanted to point out to you a little bit, and please hear me very clearly when I say I'm not talking about this in any way to offer excuses. This is years and huge bodies of research that support the amount of money that it takes to provide a quality education, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about where the state of Wisconsin ranks. You can see the little chart there that it has been in very recent years that the US average has surpassed the Wisconsin average for many years. Wisconsin was one of the top states for ACT scores in the nation, and we were also above the national average for our spending on public education. There's a lot of people who are feeling frustrated that we are no longer the top state in ACT scores, and our spending has also dipped below the national average. And so I just want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go back to our strategic plan. We talk about our people, and we say that our people are our greatest resource, right? We know that it's people, not programs, that make a difference for our kids. With more money, you get more people, right? What did we invest all of our ESSER funds on? More people, right? Whether it's instructional coaches, whether it's interventionists, whether it's behavior specialists, whether it's adults on the playground, it was aides on the buses, it was all about our people. We know that our people are expensive, but they are the heart of the work that we do. And so I just wanted to highlight this briefly for you, that the state of Wisconsin has dropped to 5.6% below the national average. And so us as a state are already below the national average. Now, I'm not talking about the high, the national average. The state is below that. We are below our state average. So when you look at spending on education, there are layers and layers and layers of possibilities. And so I don't know how long our legislature is going to continue the current funding formula. There's been a lot of discussion over the years that no legislature wants to vote to raise property taxes, and you've seen some very unique strategies in the past that they say it's funding for education, but it's really property tax relief. All of those different pieces, and they say let the local taxpayers decide if they want to support their local school district through a referendum to be able to increase spending. And yet, now there's more and more legislation being put forward to limit the number of referendums that a community can go to. It all points to a very flawed funding formula for public education. And so I just want to keep this on people's radar. We're not at the point that we can't survive, certainly not. We're not there. But I do think it's important to talk about it, that Wisconsin is below the national average. We are below the Wisconsin average. How long is that our choice? How wide are we willing to let that gap get before we decide that we want to try to invest more into the resources and so forth that we have within our community? There are, I wish I had looked up the number beforehand. At election time, we'll get it again. But there are, I think, over half the districts in the state that do some kind of a revenue limit override referendum because the state funding formula does not meet their local needs to be able to provide programming in their community. So I don't need any action, but wanted to share this with you because I appreciated the perspective that it shared with us. Any questions about that?
Nope, I believe in our staff, I believe in our students, I believe in our parents, I believe in our district, so move forward with whatever we have.
I'm hoping that we will see the impact of investing in people.
I'm hopeful as well. That's exactly right. That's all that I had for a district admin report.
WASB?
I attended the summer leadership instituted in La Crosse this past weekend. It was a statewide conference. It was excellent. We talked a lot about the mindset we tell ourselves of elevating achievement for all children. It was attended by all of the regions throughout the state. It was very good. And I do have additional information if anyone is interested in that. So, in our own backyard this time, region 6, so it was good.
Anyone else have any connections or the students?
At that August PD day, I don't know if it was put on there, but we always invite the board to meet the new staff. And so Nicole can get that invitation out there shortly so that you guys have that on your calendars. I can't remember, Nicole, if that's moved from breakfast to lunch. I can't remember off the top of my head. Do you know? We can look it up. It's
I shouldn't, it was bouncing back and forth, and I just don't want to.
Will you please send a calendar invite to the board and to myself, and it is there, because that is always very much appreciated, the opportunity for you to meet the new staff. if
Remember
that
what
works in
day
your
that
schedule.
is?
I don't,
15th.
Oh, the 15th.
okay, August 15th.
I
There you
know,
go.
that's for sure.
I thought of it when you said school board connection.
They're not doing is very valuable, so.
We created some videos and put them out there. During open house, we often will have a few tech people sitting there asking parents, have you downloaded the Canvas app? Come on over, let me help you. But you're absolutely right. I'm not sure if it's open house or maybe like second week after their kids have been in classes a little bit to check in and be able to see that kid's schedule, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just know that there's some struggles, parents have some struggles with it, and I think that it's a valuable tool that if they use it, it can make the kids toe the line a little more.
Absolutely, absolutely.
As long as the parents understand it.
Well, right, so if they
They're able to use
have a
it.
little, I think it'd have to be like a few weeks after school starts, so there's some data or whatever.
Right. I think that's been our challenge. We've done it at open house, and then they can see their child, but they don't see any things in there. So it'd be helpful for the kid to have maybe some missing assignments that they could see and recognize that. So I appreciate that.
Like 2 to 4 weeks after school starts, maybe, I don't know, but.
Good idea.
Great.
Any future agenda items? None? All right. And I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for it.
I didn't know.